So, on this day, 80 years ago, today, May the 7th, 1945. Now, the big heading, maybe this one here, Germany offers surrender to Soviet Britain US. But what may catch your eye is this little snippet here. Germans and US troops fight the SS. We'll get to that one in a minute. So, VE Day announcement will come any hour now. And there's a speculation thing here. Where? Goebbels was killed by German-controlled Prague radio last night for the fourth time and in yet another place. Latest version is that he died in the fighting in the Reichschancellery in Berlin along with Field Marshal Keitel. There was no mention of Hitler. The Russians have still found no trace of his body, but Pravda, Moscow, says the myth of his heroic death will soon be cleared up. So the headline, VE Day announcement will come any hour now. German delegates, members of the General Staff, have arrived at the Russian Army headquarters to learn the terms on which the United Nations will accept their surrender. British and American generals are present. When the Germans sign, and the state of their forces is such that it is not likely to be delayed for more than 12 hours, the war in Europe will be at an end and VE Day will be proclaimed. At a later date, there will be a formal public surrender in the ruins of Berlin. Two German air generals last night offered the surrender of the entire German Air Force to Field Marshal Montgomery, says British United Press. And Admiral Dönitz said yesterday, broadcast a don't scuttle order to all German ships, naval and merchant service, and instructed them to abstain from acts of war in all ports and waters affected by the truce with Field Marshal Montgomery. The German delegates who went to Russian headquarters to learn the terms of surrender appeared to be thunderstruck by the conditions, writes Bill Gregg. But they were informed on behalf of the three powers, Britain, Russia and the USA, that there can be no modifications. There are two documents they have to sign, one a general surrender and the other a surrender to the Russians of all troops facing them. Immediately the German delegates arrived at Russian headquarters. Britain and America were informed by Marshal Stalin and, I understand, British and American generals left to be on hand too. Continued on back page. Where are we at? This is the problem with these old newspapers. Here we are. To sign on behalf of their countries. The surrenderers up to now by commanders in the field will be superseded by the general instrument of surrender imposed on behalf of the Allied powers and applicable to Germany and the German armed forces as a whole. The Prime Minister will make only a brief announcement of VE Day on the radio, leaving the main speech to be made by the King at 9 p.m. Should the announcement come today, it is not likely to come before the afternoon. It will take at least that time to make arrangements with Moscow and Washington for simultaneous release of the news, so that all countries can celebrate together. Admiral Dönitz's order to German ships yesterday forbids personnel to scuttle the ships or render them unserviceable. Crews were told to remain on board ship. 3 German warships in Copenhagen harbour are the Hipper, Prinz Eugen and Nuremberg. Go back to the front again. Portugal has broken with the Nazis. Portugal seized all German diplomatic and official property in Lisbon last night on the ground that the national government of Germany no longer exists. The German legislation, consulate and other official buildings have been sealed until they can be handed over to the Allied Commission or whoever represents Germany. Intimation has been given to the German minister in Lisbon that Portugal no longer recognises the German government. Allies in Austria still advancing. Allied troops advancing beyond the Austrian city of Linz have reached ends 10 miles to the southeast, while units from Italy are now near Villach. Then we have a victory salvo. This is the first ever British victory salvo of the war, ordered by Monty to celebrate the German surrender to the 21st Army Group. 24 guns of the 60th City of London Heavy AA Regiment roared out, 21 rounds each, over the Field Marshal's headquarters. Manning the guns were men who did grand work during the London Blitz. This was the shoot they had waited so long for. And then we have this interesting little thing here. German and US troops fight the SS. Members of the German garrison of the tiny medieval castle at Itter, near Innsbruck, in the Austrian Tyrol, fought alongside Americans when 300 SS men attacked the castle after its surrender. Prisoners in the castle were 15 well-known Frenchmen and women, among them Daladier and Reynard. The French ex-premiers General Gamelin, Jean Barota, and tennis star and the sister of General de Gaulle. A cable from David Walker says that these prisoners were among the many well-known captives the Germans planned to hold as hostages in a vast Nazi bargaining scheme. They were being guarded by 40 members of the Wehrmacht, and the German major in command, hearing that the Americans were near, went out to give in to them. He escorted a tank back to the castle with a party of US soldiers when the SS men in the surrounding woods, hearing of the surrender, opened fire. Obviously determined that the hostages should not be lost, a hail of 88mm shells landed. Again, continued on back page. Where are we at with this one? Here we are. 88mm shells landed all around the castle. Immediately and without question, the Wehrmacht garrison joined with the tiny American force to fight back the attackers with every weapon at their disposal. During the battle, Boratura slipped out, crawled through the woods and managed to contact the Americans in the neighbouring small town of Wogel. He led a column of infantry in the 12th US Armoured Division back to the castle, where after a sharp engagement the attacking Germans were pounded into surrender. The German major, who had fought so well alongside the Americans, was among the small number of casualties. Last warning. Monty has ordered the German army commander to disarm the 300 SS troops in the Segeberg forest north of Hamburg who are retaining their arms in defiance of the surrender terms. If they refuse, military action will be taken. And we move in. So now we're getting more into civilian things. This is about the British Medical Association. These are letters to the author. And down here, call up men report even on VE Day. Thousands of men throughout the country have had calling up papers instructing them to report some days hence to Navy, Army or RAF units. And says the Ministry of Labour, it makes no difference if the day for reporting does turn out to be VE Day. They are to report just the same. We expect every man who is in a position to travel to do so, the Ministry told the Daily Mirror last night. If he can't get a train, then he must write or send a telegram to his unit as soon as possible. And then aircraft production for peace. Burma ex-prisoners arrive in India. Allied prisoners of war freed by the 14th Army after the Japanese had force-marched them out of Rangoon have been taken to hospitals in India. They reported that the Japanese had beaten them for the slightest offence, real or imaginary, and that they were given no medical treatment. American poet Ezra Pound, a Lord Ho-Ho, broadcasted to the USA from Rome, has been arrested near Genoa to meet a treason indictment against him. An appeal is being made by a large London brewery for forces men on leave to help roll out the barrel containing VE Day beer supplies. Post-war training scheme should include girls as well as boys, said Dame Vera Lawton, director of the Wrens in London yesterday, after complaining that the official Victory Thanksgiving service issued by the Archbishops of Canterbury and York was one long whine. Dr. E.R. Macassey, vicar of Maple Durham, Oxfordshire, wrote his own, spending 13 hours on it, and the 16-page booklet is now selling at sixpence. Lancasters of RAF Bomber Command yesterday brought back to England more than 1,800 freed prisoners of war. South Africa is giving notice in San Francisco that at a later peace conference she will demand that the former German territory of Southwest Africa, now under mandate to her, should be incorporated into the Union. Planes gunfire kills boy in boat. Now, interestingly, there was a YouTube video about this the other day. While fishing from a boat off Seal Sands with 3 local men, Ronald Edward Baden Pratt, 16, of Lansdowne Street, Kings Lynn, was killed when a plane fired 5 bursts, sinking the boat. The boy's father is a chief petty officer, it was stated at yesterday's inquest, which was adjourned until Thursday. Now, all these years later, it was actually revealed he was killed by an American airplane because they'd wandered into a live firing range. The guards and security police who have watched Rudolf Hess, the Kaiser of Abergavenny, have a new job now. They are watching me, i.e. the guy writing the report. On War Office instruction, they've been told, keep Hess away from the press. Russia is to have 3 seats and Britain, the US and France 2 each on the Executive Council of the proposed New World Federation of Trade Unions. Under the provisional constitution worked out in San Francisco, it was revealed yesterday. Final approval of the constitution by 25 nations with 60 million organised workers is expected before the meeting on September the 25th in Paris. Let's see if there's anything down here. Thousands of Polish and Russian girls are still working as slaves in German homes and hotels. Mostly ignorant peasants. They do not know they have been liberated because they do not understand French or English. The German employers certainly are not telling them. What are we going to do with the prisoners? We should give Russia as many as she wants, as swiftly as she can take them, and set the rest to get the coal and grow the crops we need urgently. But those we keep must work on no greater rations than our own workers. It is a strange commentary on the end of the bombs that the last that fell on central London destroyed 130 Jews in a block of flats in Stepney on the morning they were preparing for the Passover service. So Jews, first victims of Hitlerism, were the last to be killed in London in any great numbers. Then it's on about hairdressing, cold perm hairdressing, biscuits, sugar. British troops who captured Rangoon driving north of the city have linked up with 14th Army troops moving south near Haigu, 26 miles northeast of Rangoon. A corridor between Mandalay and Rangoon has been established by this link-up. Land Girls begin a battle for charter. Land Girls, representing 4 counties, launched a campaign at a mass meeting at Hereford on Sunday for a national charter which includes a demand for a war gratuity and the righting of injustices. The charter has been circulated to land girls in all parts of the country, to MPs, trade unions and other organisations, and it was decided to start a fighting fund of £1,000 to press claims. It is hoped to form a national committee and to hold a mass meeting in London. It was stated that 40 MPs already have expressed their readiness to support the charter, which declares, "We state categorically that we are not a potential army of domestic servants." It goes on to press for a war gratuity, a fair system of compensation for injury, and for a compensation scale for girls whose health has been impaired by working on the land all weathers. Also demanded is a demobilisation scheme similar to that set up for the forces, a scheme of retraining and resettlement, and the right of girls to return to their former jobs. Food was dropped to civilians in Holland again yesterday by more than 350 flying fortresses of the US 8th Air Force. $7 million food parcels, but no POWs to send them to. Facing the Red Cross authorities in London is the biggest problem ever. What to do with 7 million food parcels worth £3,500,000. Now that most of the prisoner of war camps have been overrun by the Allies, it is no longer necessary to send the parcels. And they were considering last night to 1. Hand the parcels over to the Air Ministry for the relief of 1,500,000 starving people in Northern Holland. 2. Send them to prisoners in the Far East to augment supplies there. 3. Distribute the food to hungry people on the continent and in Germany itself. 4. Give them to properly selected organisations in this country for distribution to the poor. Most of the parcels are stacked in warehouses in this country, Canada, Lisbon, Barcelona, Marseille, Toulon, Geneva and Sweden. Some are on ships on the high seas. A Red Cross official said yesterday that all parcels will go to the right people. Not one will be lost or wasted. If it is decided to send the parcels to Holland, they will be dropped by parachute in specially constructed bales. The bales will travel in the bomb bays of Halifax's, Stirling's and Wellington bombers in place of bomb loads. One reason the food parcels are unlikely to be sent to the Far East is that the packing is not suitable for hot climates and is not considered possible to repack such huge quantities. This is the man, Lance Sergeant Hugh Leslie Brown of Fulham, who sent the famous original "The Armistice Has Been Signed." He's Monty's personal radio operator, and you probably heard him telling all about it on the air. Watch these British fascists. To a May Day workers' rally in Trafalgar Square yesterday, Mr H. Levitt, Assistant General Secretary of the Guild of Insurance Officials, gave this warning. We have to keep our eyes open because British fascism is already trying to emerge from its little rat holes. Blow awaits war prisoner. With her husband expected home at any hour, after 3 years in a German prison camp, a woman lies in Plymouth Hospital, survivor of a mystery tragedy in which a married man lost his life. She is Mrs Margaret Catchpole of Park Grove South Heath, Birmingham, who was found wandering at Cornwood and said there was a man ill in a wood. Searchers found Frank Sutton, 39, married, of Butler Road, South Yardley, Birmingham, who later died in hospital from poisoning. He worked at the same munitions factory as does Mrs Catchpole. Well, there you go. It's all happening. Here is the story about a hitherto unheard of type of German concentration camp. It has no crematoriums, no gas chambers and no death pits. Yet in its way it revolted me as much as the more spectacular horrors of Majdanek. For in this camp at Konstantinovka, near the Polish city of Lodz, the oldest prisoners was 16 and the youngest a few months old. It was in fact a new invention for the Nazis, a concentration camp for children only. For 3 months now, these liberated children have been living in orphanages in Russia. I have talked with the children at one orphanage. As one little girl of 5 came running across to me crying out, "Hug me, auntie," she held up her little arms. On the left one was a tattooed number. I picked her up and, stumbling over the long syllables, she answered 69,205. "No," said the orphanage director, "that's your nasty German name. Tell us your real Russian name." And she told us. "When they first saw our doctor, they screamed and stampeded," said the director. "The only doctor they had known had regularly taken blood from them. At the age of 6, children were being put to work, beginning the day at 5:30 with a slice of bread and ersatz coffee, and finishing at 8 or 9. At night, when they fell exhausted into their bunkers. Lots of us died," one girl told me. "My baby brother died pretty soon." The children paled at the recollection of one form of punishment, a big iron box with spikes inside in which the children, unable to stand up or lie down, were kept naked for days. Then one day, a little girl told me, the Germans ran away, and after a while we heard voices in Russian shouting, "Where are the children?" And then we have the usual cartoons that appeared. More letters. Not much going on here. And on the back, we have the war in Berlin's heart. This picture, just received by the radio, shows the deserted and battered Frankfurter Strasse in the centre of Berlin, where amid the smoke and debris, the Soviet command is already directing the clearing of the streets and the organisation of food supplies. Berliners, after a long diet of Goebbels propaganda, are openly astonished at the speed and energy of such Bolshevik activities as the issuing of ration cards and the Reconstruction Proclamation. Japs breaking with Huns. Tojo, the former Japanese premier, in a Tokyo broadcast yesterday, said Germany had violated the Tripartite Pact by surrendering. Therefore, he says, the Japanese government will reserve the right to act freely on the Tripartite Pact and all political agreements entering into between Germany and Japan. He pointed out that Germany wants to fight the Soviet Union, which is not at war with Japan, and not fight Britain and the US, which are. Red Army officers in London, usually so correct and dignified in public, let themselves go in typical Russian fashion last night when they staged an impromptu concert in the street. Near their embassy in Kensington Palace Gardens, about a score of them marched along arm in arm singing lustily. Thomas J. Millward was killed and Sidney Chilcott was seriously injured and is in a hospital after an accident at South Wales Royal Ordnance Factory yesterday. And here we have, last night, the folk of Wilmington Village near Eastbourne talked of the plane crash, the strangest coincidence in years, some of them said. For yesterday, almost 3 months to the day since a Dakota transport plane crashed into the South Downs, killing 23 airmen, they heard again the sound of a low-flying plane, and again they heard it crash as it hit the Downs less than a mile away. The plane carrying mail and general cargo flew head-on into the top of a hill known as Hunter's Borough, close to the famous Longman of Wilmington. It was wrecked within a stone's throw of the previous crash and the entire crew lost their lives. So that is the news from the Daily Mirror today, 80 years ago, Monday, May the 7th, 1945. Bye for now.